Hello, it's Joe here for Joyrider TV, live once again from the Joyrider TV classroom, not outside today because it is blowing dogs off chains once again, and I haven't got a big enough chain for my dog, so I'm just going to have to leave it at that for now. So welcome to the Q&A once again. As usual, this session is being recorded live on Wednesday, the 17th of March in the afternoon, 3 o'clock Greek time. So if you are watching this later on, I won't be able to respond to you live because I won't be here. This is pre-recorded. But do leave any questions in the comments below, and either I'll respond to them or I'll respond to them in next week's Q&A, depending on what I see as more appropriate there. Good afternoon, Damien. Damien checking in there from Mozambique. That's one of the great things on Joyrider TV. Our audience is nothing short of international. That's right. Okay, so as usual, I've got some preloaded questions. Oh, hi, Brett from Maine, USA. Yeah, if we have somebody in, we're not going to have anybody here from Australia because it is bedtime in Australia. But if we did, then we'd really be banging the corners of the planet. But I'm just going to steam in with our first preloaded question. Oh, hi, Hutchie. That's Hutchie in the UK. So, yeah, we're getting some corners there, 3 different countries represented already. Oh, Damien says great conditions in Mozambique, but wind not strong enough right now for the speed stick. Ooh. It's going to come though. We know it's going to come. I've got seem to have a bit of a soft focus on at the moment. Anyway, all right. So my first preloaded question comes from Chris on Patreon. He's got Hobie 16, and he says, should I replace my old style rudder gudgeons for the new style gudgeons? So as you may be aware, I've already drawn a picture in preparation here, but the older Hobie 16s have got basically 2 fittings for the rudder. These are stainless steel, and they're not as easy for bushing, and also there's just 2 points that the rudder is held on, whereas the newer style gudgeon on the Hobies is a whole plate, which immediately gives you the feeling of it being a bit stiffer. And we have 1 piece, this is a hole at the top, and then 2 at the bottom, which gives you a lot of stability for your rudder pin, and it's easy to bush this system. It's designed with the bushing in mind, whereas this was pre-bush. So Chris is saying, should he get these gudgeons and put them on this 16? I would say if the job that is carried out is absolutely perfect, then yes, go for it. What he'd have to do is take off the old gudgeons, and then we'd have to do some measurement against a newer 16 to see if where this gudgeon mounts is actually in the same spot as this gudgeon. Otherwise, we'll have to fill in all of the holes and then get very precise measurements for where this is going to go. Because if it's not in exactly the right position, like if it's over to the side slightly, then that's going to cause steering issues. Or if it's not perfectly straight up and down, then that's going to cause issues as well. So if it's a perfect job, then I'd say there's certainly benefits in having the new style rudder gudgeon, but the potential for it not being lined up correctly might mean that your steering will never be the same again. So if you're confident that either you or somebody that you know or a boat builder can do an absolutely perfect job, then yes, go for it. Otherwise, I would leave it. Okay. I just saw from Fred that the video is pixelated. So that might actually be that I was trying to spin too many plates at the same time. I was trying to upload a video at the same time, but I've just cancelled that upload. So hopefully this should be coming through a bit better now. So there we go. I hope that explains that for you, Chris, or anybody else thinking of taking on a similar job there. There we go, preloaded. Hi, Kurosh, great to have you on board, as always. And great to have you with us as well, Fred, and thanks for the heads up there. Yeah, I thought it would be. The Greek internet is not the best in the world, I would say, and trying to do two things at once is not the best. All right, Brett says, would it be feasible to sail an F-18 without a jib to make the boat more manageable for solo sailing? I would say yes, definitely. If you're going out and the wind is going to be such that it's trapezing conditions and you're going solo on an F-18, then by all means leave the jib at home. Don't take it with you. You don't need that extra power. And definitely with the F-18 type boats with the dagger boards, you don't need the jib so much to help you with tacking or anything. And if it is getting a little bit slow on the downwind points of sail, you've still got the spinnaker in the bag, which if you're feeling a bit adventurous, you could pop the kite up. But there's no rules to say you have to take the jib with you. So by all means, leave it behind. If the wind is a bit lighter though, especially if you've got a self-tacking jib on your boat, I'd say take the jib with you to get a bit more power out of your boat because you've got it. But like, for example, if you are, here's an example, perhaps you're training with your F-18 to go to the Worlds or a similar event, Europeans, nationals, regional competition, anything at all, and you want to go out and practice some tacking, then you could leave the jib behind so you can totally just focus on your own movements across the boat, your procedure and everything, and work on your tacking without having that extra sail to worry about at all. Unless, of course, it is light winds and you have got a self-tacking jib. There we go. All right. So, Stephen, hi. Great to have you with us. Dan, hi. Oh, Dan was asking about the procedure for going from living in the real world to becoming a water sports instructor overseas. I am, it's on my list of things to do, is I'm going to write an article about what the best, well, how I've gone from being just existing in the real world to living out here as a water sports instructor and basically making a whole life around being a water sports instructor that not so many people are doing. But if I write about how I've done it, perhaps other people might be able to apply some of that to themselves. And Dan is one who certainly is keen to get involved in this lifestyle. Some things that I have learned over the years, especially being responsible for all of the recruitment at Wildwind, I can now give a lot of good advice to anybody applying for a job in a place like this with what the employer would be looking for. And one thing that I've noticed a lot is people's CVs are generally, I hate to say it, the content is usually good, but the actual presentation of people's CVs is, can I say terrible? It's pretty bad. And when it's presented in front of you, say I've got a pile of 20 CVs to go through in a day, there'll be maybe one or two that really stand out and they really make me want to read them, whereas the others just look like they've been spewed out of a computer from the 80s with a terrible font, bad layout, and not much real attention given to it. Whereas there are so many facilities these days for producing high quality CVs. Almost every word processing or similar application has got some templates for doing exactly that and making it look nice. So that is something I have learned. But just on the same thing, I just saw, Multi says, hi Multi, by the way, it's been a while. Where is the article going to be? I'm not entirely sure. I haven't actually got somewhere where I post such things. I'll certainly put it on Patreon, and I'll put it on my website, the Total Joyrider website. But perhaps I'll have a look around, but I'll put a link to it definitely in the Facebook group as well. There we go. That was not actually answering a question. That was just answering a hi. That's what you get. See, at the start of the session, even a hi gets a 5-minute response, whereas at the end, a very detailed question, it's like the other way around. Steve is first time live for some time. Always pick up later. All right. Donovan in Alberta. Great to have you with us, Donovan. Oh, the lake has only got 3 feet of ice left to melt before getting out there. Whoa. I'm going to take the hat off like I did that last week, getting a bit of a shadow of some description. Okay. Everyone, we can rest. The Nat Daddy is in the house. So there we are. Right. Stephen says, what do you think of C foils? Are they an improvement over straight boards? I'm interested in a pre-foiling Nacra 17 with C boards. Well, what the C boards do is they, it's a totally different game to the straight boards, because of course the straight dagger boards, hold on, let's just draw this in so that we can see. I'll just issue a disclaimer right now. I am by no means a foiling expert, having never foiled a catamaran, but I've been around people who do. And so this is looking from the front or the back. Your regular dagger board would be straight, of course. Then the early Nacra 17s, I think what we learned was it pre 2014, so that would be between 2011 and 2014. Those Nacra 17s have got curved, that's a bit of an exaggeration, curved dagger boards. And what that means is when the boat gets up to a certain speed, it lifts out of the water, basically planing on the flat bit on the bottom of the dagger boards there. So the boat lifts out of the water, and because the boat's lifting out of the water, it greatly reduces the friction, because of course the difference between this amount in the water and the hull is massive. So that is why foiling is taking over a bit at the moment. Yeah, so the boat is going to be much, much quicker foiling than not foiling. Now, with the early Nacra 17s, the issue that people were having is because it had the C boards, but it didn't have any wings on the rudders. So what you'd usually have on a rudder blade would be, rather than it just being like that, you'd have some sort of foiling surface on each rudder blade as well. So then the boat is sitting on 3 or 4 pieces, which gives it a lot of stability. whereas the early Nacra 17s didn't have that on the rudders, which is why when you see pictures of the early Nacra 17s, it's like the circus is in town. They're throwing some ridiculous angles, mega wheelies, and it really is a balancing act, and there's some big crashes to be had there. But if you could get a Nacra 17, an early one, with the wings on the rudders as well as the sea foils, then I think you're in for an absolutely great time. I would certainly, if one came up at a good price and we were in a fairly spendy mood, I would certainly be keen to get one out here, because I think it'd be great fun and very quick. Okay, I've got Marco on board. Hello, Marco. Where do you sail? Okay, yeah, I sail in Vasiliki, which is on the Greek island of Lefkos. This is where Wild Wind Sailing Holidays is based, which is where all of the Joyrider TV videos are coming from. And it is an absolute sailing paradise, no word of a lie or an exaggeration. All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Great to have you all with us. You could take this opportunity just to press the like button if you don't mind. That will just help people to see this later on. It will make the video more visible. As always, I've got preloaded questions. So the next one, we've got Pedro, who had some questions last week, but I didn't have time to answer them all. So here we go. All right, Pedro sails a Prindle 18-2. He says, why sometimes at the same position, trapezing level with the dagger boards, so this would be upwind sailing, you can fly the hull and go faster and it's comfortable, and other times when the hull never feels balanced and it doesn't feel good. Basically what Pedro is saying, sometimes it feels good, feels fast, and other times it doesn't feel good, feels bad. Yeah, so what that would be down to, I would say there's a lot of elements which contribute to how the boat feels when you're sailing upwind. So there is firstly the course that you're steering, and it all comes down also, of course, to the amount of wind that you're sailing in. So yeah, the course, perhaps if you're sailing higher to the wind, so this, let's say this is our normal course. Was green a good choice? Can we see it? Oh yeah, we can see that. If this is our normal course, and let's say, how do you get the boat so it feels nice? You sail on your normal course, get your, let's say it's the wind is enough to double trapeze and lift the hull. So get on your normal course, get in the position next to the dagger boards, then you can really, really change the feel of the boat by pulling on the downhaul. If you don't have enough downhaul on, what this does is it means that the mainsail will have a massive amount of curving, which is just going to make the boat want to fly the hull and not necessarily make the boat want to go any faster. All right, I'm going to rub the boat out and just go with the sail. So if we've got with less, so the boat was like here. So with less downhaul on, we're going to have more curve in the sail, but almost more importantly than the fact we've got more curve in the sail, it's where is the center of effort of the sail. With less downhaul on, the center of effort is further back. So it's not pulling the boat forwards as much, but it's trying to pull the boat sideways, which when we have that pull sideways, what that's going to do is, well, all that is going to do is try to lift the hull. It's not going to propel us forwards particularly quickly. Whereas as we pull the downhaul on more, it's going to put the center of effort in the sail lower down. It's a bit of an exaggeration, of course, lower down and further forwards. And what that is going to do is that's going to change that curve into sail to drive, because the drive from the sail is coming perpendicular to the center of effort. So that is going to be pulling like that. When combined with the dagger board, that is going to be kind of squeezing like the bar of soap or the lemon pip between the fingers, pushing from either side, which is going to shoot that forwards. Very nice. So the right amount of downhaul, essential. Perhaps you're not sheeting the mainsail like you would do normally. If you're not sheeting the mainsail, if you're sheeting it in really, really hard, then what can happen is you can feel that the rudders are stalling, but when you're sheeting it hard, you'll be able to point higher. So if you're sheeting the mainsail in really hard and you're feeling the rudders are stalling a bit and it's not feeling too good, just try moving forwards a bit. And if that doesn't work, you're not going to believe it, try moving backwards a bit. Although we've talked before about the ideal position for upwind sailing being weight around the dagger board sort of position. So there's the helm, there's the crew. It's not etched in stone. So sometimes it might be appropriate to move forward slightly. Sometimes moving back slightly is going to make the boat feel better. So I'd say those are the main ingredients to look at. The downhaul being critical, and then moving forwards or backwards slightly is going to make a big difference as well. As the wind gets stronger, moving back slightly is going to make the boat feel a lot quicker and not choking as much. If we're trying to push too much bow through the water, it's going to be kind of slowing us down. And if the boat is ever being slowed down, it is going to feel less good. There we go. All right. So Martin says, hi, Joe. Hope I can catch some of the Q&A live between work calls. I hope so too, Martin. All right. Marco says, did you ever visit Lake of Ohrid? Which country is that in, Marco? Let me know. But no, it's the short answer. All right, we've got Matt with tacking. We have looked at this in the past, actually. And I got pulled up on it. I called the video low budget self-tacking jib for a Hobie 16, but it was actually a low budget self-jibing jib for a Hobie 16. A real self-tacking jib is quite a contraption. I'll just, let's draw one on because it'll be fun. So I would never suggest putting a full-on self-tacking jib on a Hobie 16. So if this is the front beam, we're getting this? Yep. All right. A full-on self-tacking jib would have like a track with a slight curve in it. Something like this, perhaps a little bit more central. That would be supported by some posts. And on the track, it would have, similar to a traveller car, so a ball-bearing traveller car, and that is where the jib sheet goes to, that traveller car. And then the pressure in the jib will automatically put that to the right side of the boat. That is what we'd have on an F-18 or on a Tornado. And it is a significantly expensive piece of gear. I would guess that the Harken self-tacking jib track, you'd probably be looking at about €500 for one of those. So, and also you don't want all that on your 16. One of the beauties of the 16 is that it's so simple and clean. There's not very many pieces of rope on it, whereas this would add a certain amount of kerfuffle. But what we've done in the past, and before, when I was racing Tigers back in the early days, before the self-tacking jib was a standard piece of equipment, absolutely nobody had one. Nobody had one. But on the downwind leg, we thought, wouldn't it be nice if the crew didn't have to worry about swapping the jib over when we jibe, so that the crew could just focus on the spinnaker. And that is where the idea of the low budget self-jibing jib came. So what we have, how can we visualize this best? If we've got, let's just draw in, there is the clue of the jib. So the back corner of the jib where the sheets attach. And then what we have is we'll still use the regular jib sheet. So there's our jib car there and there. And we'll still use the regular jib sheets. This is not my finest bit of drawing. Regular jib sheets for the upwind sailing. And then when you're going downwind, so what we'll also have going on, let's draw this in another colour, in red, is we'll fit an extra line to the boat. You'll have to do a little bit of research and trial and error to find out what the length of this line wants to be. But from one end of the beam through the corner of the jib to the other end of the beam, we'll put another line, just like a 4mm or something. It doesn't need to be a particularly thick line, just single line tied off at both ends, going through the clue of the jib. And then what that means is when you release the jib sheet completely, the jib will then go out as far as this on here, the red line will allow. And when you jibe, that red line will take care of the jib completely. So you don't need to worry about controlling the jib sheets on the downwind leg. Very handy. But on the upwind, unfortunately, you are going to have to keep doing the jib as you would. I'd be very interested to see a 16 with a full-on self-tacking jib track, but it is way over the top for a 16, in my opinion. Aha! Hello, Robin in Florida. Great to have you with us, as always. All right, Stephen says, didn't know about the rudders needing foils. It all makes sense. Seaboards might be a step too far. Yeah, I think that is why they changed it eventually. There we go. Right, Robin asks, can you explain how the America's Cup boats are able to travel 3 times the wind speed on a downwind leg? I can try, and I'm sure if anybody's a bit scientific, they'll be able to explain much better than I can. But this is all down to the apparent wind. So the boat is going to be in blue. So, of course, the wind is coming from the top of the board. But this will go for... so, just to clarify Robin's question there, how is it that the America's Cup boats can go 3 times the speed of the wind? In the same way, like these ice yachts that we've been featuring on Show Us Your Cat, they go even more times the speed of the wind. Like I think you could have 20 knots of wind, and the boat, you could get ice yachts going at at 80 knots or something crazy. But even a Hobie 16 will sail faster than the wind. And it all comes down to this apparent wind machine, wind generator that we've got going on. So we're sailing downwind on this occasion. Oh, in a yacht, in a monohull, because we're talking America's Cup. All right, so and then the true wind is in blue. So of course we've got our true wind. And then because the boat is so fast and so efficient, we're creating a massive amount of induced wind. And it really is like a, it's like a vicious circle, but we'll call it a happy circle of, as the boat goes faster, this is our induced wind, the red one. The induced wind, as the boat goes faster, this gets more. So we are creating more induced wind and more induced wind, and the boat is going faster and faster and faster. So as we create more induced wind, the boat's going to go faster. So then we could create more induced wind, and so on. It just keeps going forever. I'm sure that there's a word for it. And then of course, the apparent wind is the combination of the true wind and the induced wind. And because we're going so fast, the apparent wind is going to be really far forwards, perhaps even further forwards than this. So say we've got a true wind of 20 knots, 15 knots, 20 knots. And then we're going at 30 knots of boat speed. Then it doesn't mean that the apparent wind is then going to be 50 knots, but it will be more than the true wind by quite a lot. If we're going 30 knots, then yeah, we're sailing on a lot. I'm not particularly scientific about these things. I know how they work, but to actually fill in the blanks, some science people could actually tell you what the actual result would be there. So there you go. I hope that clarifies even a little bit how it is possible that those boats could go so fast. It's just absolutely amazing that boats are doing over 40 knots on the race course. Ridiculous. All right. Okay, Marco's in Macedonia, which, if you didn't know, Macedonia is just to the north of Greece. But no, I've never actually been to Macedonia. But who knows, once the gate, I think for a lot of people who before lockdown started weren't really thinking about traveling very much, I'm feeling once lockdown is finished, like in the off season, because I have to be here in the summer, I'm certainly keen to go and stretch my legs and see some new places, because I feel like I've seen this place now. Yes, I might pop up to Macedonia. All right, Knack Daddy likes the kerfuffle. And what is not to like about the kerfuffle? Multi says he likes the classroom concept. Yeah, I think it's a very good, handy way of explaining things. Of course, okay, Fred just said, does a kerfuffle have sugar on it? It just depends on how you take it. I think it just depends. In the summer, when I've got a boat park full of boats, it is nice to articulate an answer by pointing to a boat, which perhaps makes it a little bit more interesting. But here we are. All right. Hi, Oscar. Nice to have you with us. Oscar says, at my club, 3 people buy new 20-foot cats. Season is going to be fun with some club racing. I would certainly think so. All right, Marco's doing his bit for the Macedonia tourist board. He says it's a very beautiful lake, good for sailing. Well, I'm definitely keen to come and have a look. All right, the Knack Daddy's in there with some science. Add the vectors head to tail equals apparent wind equals lift equals sailing faster than the wind. There we are. If you understood that, you've got a better mind for this sort of stuff than I have. Hello, Isaac. Great to have you with us. How do you know when to change the standing rigging? Okay, so firstly, the standing rigging is what we would call the rigging that holds the mast up. So that would be the shrouds and the forestay. How do you know when it's time to change them? It is almost impossible to predict a piece of rigging breaking, because most of it, if we've got, here we go, there's our eye in the end, then we've got the ferrule that holds, it's much bigger than it actually is, the ferrule that holds it all together. Where it usually would break would be around the ferrule here, because that is causing the weak spot on the wire. So for that reason, it's really difficult to visually be able to see if a piece of rigging is about to break. What we get sometimes, don't know if you get them too, is inside the eye here would be what you'd call the thimble. And sometimes you get cracks in the thimble. And if there's a crack in your thimble, the thimble is there to protect the wire. That means that your wire's not getting protected. And that definitely means that, yes, it's time to replace the rigging. But I would say, as a rule, if you are sailing on salt water or storing your boat next to the sea, probably, I don't want to be, you know, it's a very difficult line to cross, is how often. Ideally, if the cost of it is not an issue, I'd say every 3 years, but that's quite regular, especially if you're not using your boat very often. But realistically, before it gets to 5 years, the reason salt water, I would say, replace the rigging more often than if you are keeping your boat next to a lake, is because the salt water, the salt in the air, is going to degrade the materials a lot quicker than just no salt water in the air. Okay, Stephen says, one way to appreciate the apparent wind is put your hand out of the car window at 50 miles per hour, and then you've got 50 miles per hour of induced wind. Very good. All right, Oscar says, any tips for doing better starts on the race course? Yeah, this is a pretty big question, but my main bit of advice when it comes to starting a race is staying out of trouble and making sure you're in the front row. All right, let's have a look at this. Okay, so the start line of a race course. The first leg of a race will, if it's in open sea, or perhaps if it's in a body of water that's not constrained by the geography of it, like if you're racing in a river, like doing some club racing, then you might not be starting upwind. You might be starting on a reach or something, just because that's the only way that you can do it. But because we're largely cat sailors here, I think most people are sailing in a bit of space, which means for almost everyone, the start line is going to be on an upwind point of sail. So what we're aiming to do is at the time when the starting gun goes and the timer runs out, we're aiming to just be crossing the line just after that starting gun goes, in the right direction with clean wind and with the boat at full speed. Easy, isn't it? No, well, it's quite tricky. So it requires practice. So a good thing you could do is, if you're out sailing and you do find some things out on the water, perhaps there's two buoys out on the water which are roughly square to the wind, you could do some practice when you're not on the race course. Just set your watch to like a 1 minute timer or a 2 minute timer, and just practice approaching that line, that imaginary line, and crossing it at full speed as soon as your timer on your watch runs out. And aim to be, if it's windy enough, crossing the line at speed, double trapezing, and then as soon as you've crossed the line, get back in off the trapeze, jibe round, start your watch again, and just keep doing it over and over and over again. Like in a session, if you could do 10 or 20 practice starts like that, that is going to help you so much the next time that you're on the race course. It almost makes me feel that I should be doing that myself, and I'm certainly going to do that. So that is how to train if you're on your own and you want to get better starts, is just to do something like that, and then try to vary it a little bit once you get into the swing of things. So sometimes you could start, usually at the right side of the start line would be the committee boat, and then at the left side would be a buoy. That buoy we call the pin end, incidentally. So just try sometimes starting at the committee boat end, sometimes starting at the pin end, so you get a feel for both. The one bonus of starting at the pin end is, if you get to the line early, you can then bear away down the line and then poke it up just as the clock runs out. But the reason why the committee boat end is largely the favoured end of the line to go for is, if you're starting right in there, it's actually impossible for another boat to be between you and the wind. So you're guaranteed clean wind to a certain extent. And then what we're looking for, so just, we could talk for hours about starting, but just one other tip with starting to get better starts is, when in a timer, if you're doing this exercise, this probably doesn't apply so much, and it depends on the wind strength. But when you get to about a minute and a half before the start, put yourself in a position where you can get to the start line on a close reach. So it would be sort of round here somewhere, a close reach rather than upwind. So if you're like here, this isn't such a great place to be a minute and a half before the start, because you're on a really critical angle to get around this buoy. But if you can be more here with a minute and a half to go, this means that you've still got options. You've got the option to bear away. You can head up a bit, slow down. Also on the close reach, you can sheet out to slow down. So you've got a lot of options. And then keep an eye on any other boats coming in and just protect your space. So if it looks like somebody's having a go, then there's many ways that people can have a go, of course. Then, of course, you want to be doing something about it. But that is just touching on starting. But I've got quite a few other preloaded questions to look into before we go. So that would be the first thing. Just do as much practice as you can. All right, Oscar just follows up with saying, would you recommend to start at the wrong side? So from the buoy through to the committee boat. Oh, so, well, the issue with starting going this way is, of course, a right-of-way issue, which is you're going to be on port tack, which means everybody starting from the other side is going to be on starboard tack, which means you have to keep clear of absolutely everyone, which means that the port tack start, although there is glory there to be had if you're willing to put yourself out there and take that risk, but it is a very risky starting strategy, whereas starting on starboard tack is far safer. And the best, safest starts that you can go for, which is what I generally go for if I'm sailing in an international regatta, because the worst thing that can happen to your race is to get a really bad start and then you're just spending the whole race trying to get back into it, is to start middle of the line with loads of space. If you're going for the middle of the line and you see more boats sort of coming towards you, you could then perhaps go a bit more towards the pin end, get away from them, and just get as much space as you can. There we go. All right, so back on. Hi, Damien, great to have you with us. We're just talking about sailing just now. Okay. All right, Dan says, any good budget sailing watches you would recommend? Yeah, I would recommend what I use, strangely, because that is all that I've used for a very long time. This is, here we go, I'm even going to take it off. This is a Timex Ironman. That's what time it is here. A Timex Ironman Triathlon. And I've probably had about 10 of these. They're usually something like £25. And I've had about 10 of these, maybe more, probably more actually, more like 15. And I would never actually consider, for a normal watch without a GPS, I wouldn't really look anywhere else because they're cheap. I usually go with the animal watch strap or the Velcro style watch strap, because that means if you lose one pin, you don't lose the watch. Yeah, so I've just been using these forever, and it does everything you want. It does the countdown timers, got stopwatch, alarm. What else do you need? It's got the light, which is handy. There you go. That's called a Timex Ironman Triathlon. All right. There we go. All right, Kurosh, hello. I tried sailing a foiling Stunt 9 S9 boat last weekend, which has the wand system T-foils, similar to a moth. Very wild, pardon me, as all normal assumptions of using weight to counter boat heel didn't work. Yeah, it's a different game. It's exciting time. All right, Isaac says about starting. When sailing a cat, should you act differently compared to sailing a monohull or a dinghy? I would say the difference would be in a cat, it does take the boat a little bit more time to get up to speed than, like, say, if you're comparing a Hobie 16 to a laser, you can get the boat up to speed in a very short distance. So what we're looking to do, gosh, she's magnetic. What we're looking to do is have the boat parked near to the start line. So just with the sails loose, just parked. And then when we feel it's the right time to get the boat up to full speed, we'll bring the sails in, maybe bear off a little bit, getting the boat up to speed. Whereas in a Hobie 16, this is probably going to take you something like 3 boat lengths, maybe more. Whereas in a laser, you're probably only looking at 1 boat length. The good guys, I think, I could be wrong, So that is one big difference. And the other big difference is in a catamaran, we're not able just to throw a couple of tacks in to get out of dirty wind. That's going to cost us a lot of time. So getting into a position, I'm sure it's very important in monohull racing, but in cat racing, even more important to be starting with looking also to which side of the course we want to get to, and get over to that side of the course as quickly as possible. But yeah, that's all I've got on that. Isaac, thanks for the question. All right, Kurosh follows up. The T-wing under the water was stronger than my body weight on the trapeze. Foiling boats are totally different. There we are. Okay, so if we can cease fire on the questions now, unless there's been something you've been dying to ask, but you weren't able to get to your keyboard. I've just got some more preloaded questions to get through. All right, Pedro asks, he'd like to know about blocks. This is Pedro with the Prindle 18.2. He's running a 7-to-1 purchase system, and he's asking, would it be worth going to a 10-to-1 or a 12-to-1? Now, the thing with purchase systems is the more purchase we add to our main sheet system, it means we're going to have more rope. So I felt that the sweet spot, which is what we use on the F-18s, is the 8-to-1, which I'd say should be the right one for the Prindle 18.2. Because if you do go up, the 10-to-1 and the 12-to-1 is much, much, much easier to sheet in, because we're multiplying our power with those extra purchases. But it means to sheet in the same amount, we have to sheet in a lot more, which of course means we have to sheet out a lot more actual rope to have the sail move the same amount. So the 8-to-1 is definitely what I would say is the sweet spot for a purchase system. I do actually use an 8-to-1 on the Tornado as well, which perhaps is a little bit unfair on the arms, but it's still doable. And I like to have that kind of like, if I let out that much main sheet, the sail's going to go out that far. It's just nice to know exactly where you are. Whereas if you put it up to a 10 or a 12, you're going to feel a bit more caps. There's going to be a transition period in getting used to the amount that you've got to sheet out in the gusts, for sure. Okay, continuing. Kurosh, who is with us, he's preloaded one. Are battens sold for different weather or performance? Would stiffer battens reduce sail curvature, make the boat faster upwind? Great question. Kuros is the man for the good questions. So it depends on the class of the boat first. If you're sailing a Hobie 16 or a Dart 18, for example, the battens are, this is the batten you get, that is the batten that you use. That is the class rules. You could, of course, change the battens in your Hobie 16, and it would probably have quite an effect on the amount of curve in the sail. But I wouldn't generally recommend it unless you've just got far too much time on your hands and you happen to have a load of battens lying around. Firstly, the way to check how stiff a batten is before we go into when we change them is if you take your set of bathroom scales. So let's say this is the bathroom scales. Put your batten on the bathroom scales, push down on the top, and what you're looking for on the scales is the moment that the batten starts to bend, and then record what, and even write on the batten what number it says. It'd be something like 30 kilos or something, and that is how stiff that batten is. The stiffer battens are going to have higher numbers. And then what we're looking for, oh my goodness, who designed this sail? What we're looking for in our sail is to have, what we want ideally is to have all of the battens an equal stiffness. Back in the Dart 18 fleet, there used to be people who would buy battens, check how stiff they are, and if they were the wrong stiffness, because there was a tolerance in the build quality, if they were the wrong stiffness, they'd then buy more battens, sell those other ones on as brand new to somebody who wasn't perhaps quite as obsessed with batten stiffness. But if you can get all your battens exactly the same stiffness, that is optimal as a starting point. And then what we generally do is the top 2 or 3 battens, depending on your sail shape, you would change depending on the wind strength. Most people would have soft battens and hard battens, just speaking generally, for the top 3. So if it's going to be very strong wind, we'd put the stiffer battens in the top, and that would make the top of the sail really flat, and it would make it open up more, which is going to be much more efficient for the strong winds. So there we go. If you generally want your sail to be less powerful, you could replace all the battens for stiffer battens. If you want your sail to be more powerful, of course, softer battens would do that for you. All right, hello to E1K from Brittany. Great to have you with us as always. Right, just steaming through the preloaders. All right, I've got a question from Raf. Don't know where Raf is, but he's, we're talking about capsizing. Woohoo! Yeah. He's talking about using the bag for capsize writing, and specifically, can we use the bag to help get the boat up from inverted? Yes, we could certainly do that in pretty much the same way. Doing a lot of drawings today. There's our boat upside down. Wind coming from this way. We're sat here. Sad face because we're upside down. Oh no. And what we've done, let's draw the writing line in green. So writing line is passed under this hull. We're pulling on the writing line, and what that is doing, this is just how to bring your boat up from upside down. What that's doing is it's going to lift this part of the boat, ideally get either to the front or the back, so that we're lifting the corner of the trampoline, which is closer, which is the furthest to windward. So that's just going to lift that corner. The wind is going to get underneath that corner, and it's going to start to blow the boat up onto its side, combined with the air in the mast. Now, if somehow, so firstly, if it is windy enough to invert your boat, then you shouldn't need to use the bag to get the boat upright from inverted. There should be enough wind just to do it like this. But because if the wind is lighter and you've capsized, then the boat shouldn't invert so quickly, which means you've got time to get on the writing line, stop the boat from inverting. So it shouldn't get to this position in wind that isn't strong enough to bring the boat back upright. But if you are struggling to get the boat back upright and you're carrying a bag, then you could do something pretty similar. I've never actually tried it. We'll do it in the summer. Is get the writing line. You'd have to put it over your shoulder. It would be, I think it'd be pretty difficult actually, but I've never tried it, but we will try it. This will be interesting. And then we'll have the bag of water here. And then of course, that weight is going to really help to bring the boat upright pretty sharpish. But yeah, I'm looking forward to trying that actually. There we go. We get a video out of that. that's for sure. Okay. Right, Bull Thrush says, forgot it was Wednesday. I'm just here to remind you, today is Wednesday. It's just part of the service. All right, we've got one from PT73 Personal Training. He says, the position of the jib while sailing with the spinnaker all the way out, or more like sailing upwind. Yeah, it depends a bit on the wind strength, but what I would usually do is before putting the spinnaker up. So let's say in your hold on, what are the words? In your preparation for putting the spinnaker up, first thing is you're going to turn the boat downwind onto a broad reach. Then, having turned the boat onto a broad reach, you would usually have the jib out quite a long way. But what I would do on the race course is, if it's on the Tornado, because Tornado's got a big jib, I would ease the jib out about that much sheet, ease it out, then pull the spinnaker up. If it was on an F18, much smaller jib, I wouldn't necessarily let the jib out before hoisting the spinnaker. There we go. And then once you're sailing along with the spinnaker up, you can then look at the telltales on the jib and tune the jib appropriately to get it in the right spot when sailing with the spinnaker. Pretty short answer, really. There we go. And another question is mast rotation positions. All right, so there's two schools of thought with the mast rotation. It seems like there's my school of thought, which is definitely coming from how does it feel, to other people's school of thought, which is scientifically this is what should work. But for me, let's go with the blue. Too many colours, too many options. It's bad. So how are we going to do this? Right, we're going to draw in our boat. There's the shroud. So for me, the mast rotation, I would always, here's our mast, quite exaggerated. I would always have the mast so it's pointing at the shroud. Always. Every point of sail, every wind strength, I would always have the mast pointing at the shroud, because what we want is to have generally the mast pointing into the wind for a start, but also by having the mast in this, I'm going to say plane, it means that it's very easy to bend the mast, which means it's much easier to sheet the sail in. There we go. Now, that's me. You could say that's a bit lazy, isn't it? Surely letting the mast rotation out a bit on the downwind points of sail, it's going to make us go faster. Well, if you think about with the spinnaker up, because most boats with adjustable mast rotation are going to have a spinnaker, with the spinnaker up, our apparent wind is going to be coming in that direction, which means what we're trying to do, let's change colour, is with the airflow coming over the sail. So the sail is going to be pretty much like that. The airflow is coming both sides. And because the mast is pointing straight into the wind, it's in the perfect spot to get a good smooth flow of air over both sides. Whereas the way that I see it is if we allow the mast to rotate all the way to 90 degrees for the downwind, is it's going to kind of, the wind's going to come, it's going to hit it, and then we're going to get a turbulent airflow at the start of the mainsail over the back there. Now, that's my view on mast rotation, but another view on mast rotation on the upwind point of sail is you keep the mast in that position, the same that I just mentioned, and then as it gets windier, you bring the downhaul in, and just keep downhauling that bad boy until you've got the downhaul on maximum. And if then, this is actually what has come from Danny and Costas, who are the many times Tornado world champions, and they're doing. I think they came second in the F18 in the last F18 Worlds. They say keep pulling the downhaul until you've got it maxed out with the mast in that position, and then once you get there, if you need to depower more on the upwind, then pull the mast in. Maybe that's a bit much. Tight, so it's pointing at the back beam, and release the downhaul and start again. So start bringing the downhaul in that position. But I've tried that, and for me, it felt absolutely horrible, and I couldn't get on with it. So that is why I'm sticking to my guns. If, like, one major thing with sailing is if you are comfortable on the boat, you are going to be able to sail the boat faster than if you're uncomfortable on the boat. Granted, you could train with the mast in the uncomfortable position until it becomes comfortable, but sometimes you just get that feeling, and you know. All right, so continuing onwards with some more preloaded. Oh, this is quite an interesting one. I've got a preloaded question from PSE Ron H, is what I'm going to call him. He says, can you recommend a cheap way to build a beach dolly or launching trolley? To buy one on the internet or at the market price with the big wheels is in excess of 600 euros. It is quite expensive, he says, if you're not a heavy user of your boat. And there's not many on the second-hand market. This is true. So I did have, what we've done here at Wildwind is we buy our wheels separately. I'm not going to lie to you, it is expensive. I use a place called CADCAT, CADKAC. In fact, I could even type that in, I think. CADCAT.com. There we go, cadcat.com. And they seem to be the #1 suppliers of these massive wheels. The massive wheels cost about 160 euros each. So it's expensive, yes. But in the real world, if you're not using your boat very often, that's going to last you 20 years or something. So you need 2 wheels, 320 euros. Bearings for each wheel, probably another 50 or 60 euros. And then everything else you can make yourself. Well, or you get someone to make. So you can get the axle, the main tube, probably about 40 euros for the tube to go down the middle. And then you'll need to somehow come up with some sort of cradles on which to put your boat. But the simplest could be just to get 2 pieces of plywood screwed in around the, or what do you call it, a Jubilee clip, holding that to the axle with a few layers, quite a few layers of foam on top, sit your boat on. And then before you know it, you've got a trolley for, let's say, 400 euros, 450. So definitely keep looking for secondhand. Look on eBay, any other websites advertising secondhand stuff. And then when one comes along, then there it is. That is why when we're looking at used boats, if a used boat comes with a trolley with the big wheels, that is immediately, realistically, 400, 500 euros worth right there straight away. And then if it comes with a trailer as well, trailers are expensive. There we are. Okay, just some more chat in the chat. Okay, oh, we've got Chris there. Chris, if you didn't catch it, I answered your question about the rudder gudgeon mounting first. So that is right at the start of the video, which we'll be able to view later on. Are you still selling flags? Yes, but I think I've actually only got one left. I'll have to check with James if James is out there. Is James out there? If James is there, have I got any flags left with you? Otherwise, I haven't got many left. So it's time to put in an order. Perhaps what we can do, I'll do it on the YouTube community tab. I'll come up with some flag designs and get your opinions on whether you think it's a good design or not, and whether you'd buy one. Because, of course, buying a load of flags, you know, I haven't got much money, etc. And on we go. There we go. Yeah, so I think I've got a few left here in Greece, and maybe there's one or two left in the USA at the moment. Right, Rodrigo, still in lockdown mode. When will you be able to sail again? Yes, it's not looking too perky at the moment. We're still in deep red or crimson lockdown on Lefkas Island at the moment. But I think it's the 12th of April. There's meant to be some fairly major announcements in preparation for the summer season. So hopefully from the 12th of April, what's the date today? 17th. Then there hopefully will be the chance to get back out on sea. Hello, Scott. Great to have you with us, as always. All right, and Kurosh says, I think it's back on the mast rotation. If mast is in 90 degrees, isn't that making the mast vulnerable to breaking? I was taught to never go beyond 45 degrees. Yeah, so if we're having the mast like this, this would just be for upwind sailing. We'd absolutely not have it in this position for sailing on a reaching course. Also, with the kite up, the one benefit of having the mast all the way around to 90 degrees is with the mast there, and there's our sail absolutely cranked in. That is making the the mast as strong as it possibly can be. We're least likely to break the mast if we're sailing with the spinnaker. So there we go. Okay, Stephen says hi. Hi, Stephen. Great to have you with us. All right. German's fan. Guten Tag. Thanks for the tip to soak my main sheet block. Works perfect now. Yes, a result. I think that was perhaps his ratchet wasn't working so well in his main sheet. He soaked it, and the ratchet has come back to life. It's a miracle. This is great. Very pleased for you there. Glad to help. All right, I've still got two more in the preloaded questions. First, E1K. What do the flags look like? The flags, what have I got? I've got ones which are pretty much black. I've got black ones which are pretty much like this. Says giving it the beans under there. It's black, green. I think it's green boat, grey writing. Or perhaps it's green writing, grey boat. I can't remember exactly. But that is what we've got. Incidentally, at this time, very exciting times. I have just finished making an actual video, which is more than 60 seconds long. And it is about fitting new carbon parts to the Tornado rudder assembly. I know that is pretty niche, but very interesting. And that's going to be coming out on Friday at 5:30 Greek time. So that's the same time that Show Us Your Cat normally goes out on the Sunday. So take a look at that. These carbon pieces are absolutely beautiful, like a work of art. So that'll be on Friday. Bernardo says you must go on the Optimist. Yeah, funny you should say that. We've just had because I'm trying to get my little boy interested into sailing. So we got an optimist out the other day, put the sail up in the garden, and he sat in it. That was as far as it went. Yes. All right, Jameson. Hey, just been getting into sailing. Appreciate all the videos. I think it stops at I. Well, thanks. Yeah, great that the videos are helpful. I'll try to do more videos for beginners to cat sailing, or people at the early stages of cat sailing during the summer as well. We kind of touched on it last year. Bernardo, will Wildwind open this year? Absolutely, 100%. We are looking at being open. The way it's looking right now is to non-UK travellers. We're looking at opening middle of May, and then for the UK, we're looking at opening at the end of May. That is how we're looking at the moment. But the season coming up is going to be an absolute rip snorter. If you like standing on the side of a catamaran and going extremely fast, then we share a common interest. All right, Jeffrey, wondering about the hook of a harness. What do you recommend? Yeah, the harness Wildwind and myself, we've been using Magic Marine trapeze harnesses now for at least 20 years, and they are excellent, very durable. There's a good range there, and they've got a really good quick release system on the hook. I haven't got one in my hand at the moment. If you remind me, Jeffrey, for next week, preload a question for next week, and I'll bring one to the Q&A for next week so we can have a look at one. But definitely, I've seen that I think it's the Hobie Class Association actually have just changed their racing rules to say that in any race, you are not allowed to sail with a trapeze harness that doesn't have a quick release. Well done to the Hobie Cat Class International Racing Association, or whatever the sequence of the words are, but that is really good. All right, next preloaded question. All right, this is from Hutchie, who's here live, I think. He says, I remember the huge surge in popularity of cat racing in the 1980s, which seemed to fizzle away after 10 to 15 years. Now, I can jump in at that point, actually. So back in the day, the thing that was great back in the day, like in the 80s and right up till the end of the 90s, was there wasn't so much choice. There were not as many classes of catamaran as there are now. Same for monohulls as well, which meant that, all right, back then, for me, when I was into it, which was, I was really into it early 90s through till when I started working here in 96, the big fleet in the UK was the Dart 18, or there was the Hobie 16, the Hurricane 5.9, and then everything else from where I could see was in a bit more of a minority, but those were the big classes. If you wanted some good class racing, it was a no-brainer. You pick one of those and off you go. People weren't getting into the Tornadoes so much because they were furiously expensive because of it being an Olympic class. And then what's gradually happened over the years is there's been more and 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 more classes appearing, which means you don't really get these big classes like you used to. Like I did the first Dart 18 Worlds, and there was over 300 boats on one start line. That was epic, so good. And it was great not having so much choice. Whereas now, I think if you were looking at buying a catamaran, there's probably 50 more different choices to go for. The same happened with the F-18s as well. The glory days for me were at the end of the 90s when I was racing a Hobie Tiger class, And the Hobie Tiger was, of course, an F-18, but also had its own class as well. And we had our own world championships and European championships, as well as the possibility for F-18 events. And at the world championships, we were getting 100 Tigers. That was epic. 100 boats like that, all exactly the same. And they all happened to be at Lake Garda, which is probably one of the best places to go boat racing in the world. Such good times. And then there just became more and more choice. But as well as that, of course, the technology improved, the designs changed, so the Tiger became a bit outdated in the F-18s. But even so, back then were the glory days. And Hutchie says, have you seen that at Wildwind? Is there going to be a cat sailing renaissance? Definitely a cat sailing renaissance. Yeah, there had been a shift to people wanting to do more monohull sailing, definitely. But now it's definitely a lot more balanced than it used to be, because let's face it, cat sailing is more fun. You get more boat speed for your effort sailing cats than sailing monohulls, and it's nice. But I think the most popular for us at Wildwind is the laser, the single-handed laser, because everybody wants to be the captain of their own ship, and the laser does that for them. And the laser is a lot less intimidating than a catamaran for the uninitiated as well. There we are. All right. So, but I think cat sailing is always going to be there. But I think what everybody needs to do is kind of focus and stop jumping from class to class. Choose a class, stick with it for 5, maybe 10 years, and then look at moving to another class. One problem has been also is diluting within the class of adding a spinnaker kit to a class that didn't have one before. I know this is what has made the Hurricane SX class in the UK really good, is adding the spinnaker, but other classes not so sure. Oh my goodness, I've lost my questions. Right, one last question, and then I think that's going to do it. All right, so I've got a question from, two last questions. From Stephen. I think Stephen's here with us actually. This is a good one actually. This is in harnesses. Is there any reason why you wouldn't wear a windsurfing waist harness? If you're not familiar with a windsurfing waist harness, it's basically like a very, like, you know what the boxers win when they win the cup, they get the belt, and the windsurfing waist harness is very similar to that, just has the hook in front. The reason why the windsurfing waist harness is not good for sailing, and it's never going to be good for sailing, is because in sailing, compared to windsurfing, you're putting all of your body weight into the harness, whereas windsurfing, you are largely standing, but standing outboard, so there's a lot less weight and pressure going through the harness, whereas sailing, it is all of your body weight. And the waist harness, all of that body weight is going to be taken by your lower back, and that is going to lead you, it might be all right for a session or two, but it could lead to you having some pretty serious back problems, which let's not risk it there. What we used to do a lot of here at Wildwind as instructors is wear windsurfing seat harnesses, which are basically like a trapeze harness, but with no back. We used to wear those a lot because it was really cool. And also it was a lot less bulky, and nobody ever tightened up their back support anyway on the trapeze harnesses. So we were just wearing windsurfing seat harnesses, which worked really well, but definitely not the waist harness. No. There we go. In fact, Hobie did make their own trapeze harness that had detachable shoulder straps. So for short course racing or just blasting, then they were ideal, slightly less bulky. There we go. All right, I've got one last question. Goodness gracious, hope everyone's having a good time. Don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't already done so. If you've done it already, don't hit it again, because that will remove what your good work. Okay, I'll just before the last question, let's just. Okay, E1K says, what do the flags look like? Oh, I've done that. Yeah. Oh, Bernardo says, when did you start sailing? I started sailing when I was about 12 years old, and I did start off with monohull sailing, but very quickly started at a very early stage, started crewing on Dart 18s. And then after only maybe 2 years crewing on the Dart 18s, I got my own Dart 18, which was the oldest, most knackered Dart 18 in the world. But I sailed that boat every single day. All right, Michael. Hi, Michael in Chicago. Snow is gone. Ski season's done. Time to start working on the boats. Yeah, if you've got a tornado, stay tuned on Friday. There's going to be some exciting stuff there. Right, Mark says rowing has taken over on our lakes here. Germans fan says, yeah, he's got the rowers as well. You've got to watch yourself. There's been some collisions. Mark says, I believe Hobie Sailing has been sold again. Yeah, they've gone, Hobie have, of course, gone very much with the plastic kayaks. That is where they're focusing their business now. But I think it's just the way that things are. You can't fault them for it, because the amount of fiberglass catamarans that Hobie are actually selling, so few that if they stuck to that, they'd have probably gone by now. But the plastic boats are really popular for people going fishing or just going exploring and stuff. And that is what has kept Hobie alive. So it's a sad state of affairs, but it's been necessary. Crest 24, hello. Jackson, will Wildwood open this year? Yes, we'll be open mid-May. All right, so last question is from Nick F. Nick's got a Hobie 18 Classic, and we're talking about the jib, let's call it jib car positions. So on a Hobie 18 Classic, if we look from above, you'll notice that the red does not rub out as much. I should lay off the red. Should have known better there. All right, on the Hobie 18 Classic, comparing it to the Hobie 16, oh, what have I done? Oh my goodness. Okay, we'll go with that. All right, so what the 18 Classic has got is a jib track that goes forwards and backwards. And on the 18 Classic, there's no way of moving your jib sheeting angle in and out like you have on a Hobie 16. There we go. So when would you use these jib tracks? All right, so have I got room to draw another one? Yeah, okay. So is that it? Oh, no, oh, we're right there. Okay, so there's the mast. There is the jib. Of course, the jib on an 18 is much bigger than that. So the jib track position, you'd either move if you are for different wind strengths. So our starting point in a wind strength, like in light winds, or when we're getting towards, when we're not overpowered, let's say, when we're not yet letting the traveller out for power, then what we're looking to do with the jib track is to put it in a position where, let's change to the blue, where we're getting an even amount of tension in the foot of the sail, the bottom, and the leech of the sail. So we're looking to get the same amount of tension in the foot and the leech. So that is going to come down to a point on the hull. Yeah, yeah. Okay, as the wind gets stronger, what we want to do is allow the leech of the sail, the back edge, to open up, and that's going to help to spill wind, and it's going to have a kind of similar effect to traveling the jib out, although obviously quite different. So to open up the back edge of the sail, we're going to move this sheeting position further back. Bit of an exaggeration there, but there we go. Further back, which is going to be pulling the bottom of the sail much more. So the bottom of the sail is going to be really flat, and the back of the sail is going to be really open, which is going to help us to lose power that way. With these jib traveller positions, we are never, ever going to put them further forwards than this even position, because we never want to have the leech of the jib tighter than the foot. And there we go. That is the story with the jib traveller positions. It is going to change if you alter your mast rake as well. So if we put the mast back more, then what we're going to have to do is move the jib traveller track further forwards to keep the tension the same as it was when it was more upright. If we get that. Lovely. All right. Oh, Nick F is with us. Hi, Nick. Okay. Yeah, so there we go. That is all the preload. I'll just double check. Yeah, that's all the preloaded questions answered there. Thanks very much for joining me this afternoon. It's been a great pleasure. This will, of course, be uploaded after we've finished, and I will now spend the next 4 hours indexing when all the questions were answered so that it's easier to navigate when you come back. But yeah, there we are. If you want to support the channel, either head over to Patreon or to totaljoyrider.com if you're feeling like a bit of shopping, or just hit the like button, but I think you've already done that, or tell your friends, or yeah, there we go. So I'll see you next week with some more, and I'll see you on Friday. It's a premiere, the Friday video. So if you get it there live, we can do a bit of live chat while watching that absolute humdinger of a video. All right, I've now got to try to locate how to stop the live video. Oh, end stream, that would be it. All right, right, we'll see you later for some more. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.